Gregg Hurwitz is the New York Times bestselling author of more than 24 thriller novels. His new book is called Antihero, now available for you to read right now. The 11th book in the wildly successful Orphan X series dating back to 2016. And Gregg joins us from his home in California. Gregg, thanks for your time today.
Thank you for having me on.
I really like this read. It was a really fun book to go through, the latest adventure of Orphan X, Evan Smoak. Why Antihero? Where did the title come from?
Well, this book is a lot about him figuring out whether he can integrate a higher code that he's forced to contend with into his code, which is he's lived an assassin's life. He's got his assassin's 10 commandments. And the question that is raised here really is about whether he is in fact a hero or an anti-hero. Whether the things that he has been trained to do, he has been trained like a weapon. He's been built to be a weapon since the age of 12. And what makes this book very different is he is somebody now, he's a government trained assassin who helps people in desperate need. And the woman he helps this time happens to be an Orthodox Christian, and she demands of him that he not kill anybody, even the people who brutally assaulted her, who he's pursuing. And can he do that? Is that something, can he go into this mission with one arm tied behind his back and face all of these threats and this menace? Is he an anti-hero or a hero?
Well, Evan is changing. He helps two people who really didn't ask for it in this book. He makes, as you said, he makes the woman a promise that he would not have made in his previous life. He's reached a new place with Joey in their relationship. So how important is it for you to keep him evolving? We don't want the same blunt instrument book after book after book.
It's essential. There's a line that I quote in every book in this series, and for me it's the theme around which the whole series coalesces. And that's when Evan was taken out of a foster home at the age of 12. He was this little scrawny kid, and his handler, former CIA station agent named Jack Johns, who becomes like a father figure to him, he tells him when he's 12 years old, he says, the hard part is not making you a killer. The hard part is going to be keeping you human. And the series is about that more than anything else. I mean, Evan, for all the things he is trained in, he's an Eskrima knife fighter. He's got mixed martial arts training. He's a brilliant sniper. He never learned or was taught how to speak the strange language of intimacy. And so the books are about these, ideally, they're these high intensity thriller novels, but they're really about the process of one man trying to become more human and understand what that means. And that's really accelerated in the last two books. And here in Antihero, he faces, in a lot of ways, his ultimate challenge.
Who is Luke Devine? Is he an amalgam of today's high-profile billionaires, or is he somebody just out of Gregg's vast mind?
He's both of them. It's so funny whenever people ask, did you base this character on real people or on yourself? Everything has a piece of me in it. I usually get away if a character is malicious or petty or unappealing because nobody ever thinks that that's them. Usually people in my world only think that they're my characters if they're the good characters. But it's, of course, impossible to dredge something up without, acknowledging that I live in the same world with everybody else. So I always laugh when I go to the movies and it opens and says, based on actual events. And I always think, is anything not? Is there anything that's wholly differentiated from the human experience? So yeah, Luke Devine is a visionary. He's a billionaire. He's a power broker. He's bipolar. He is hypomanic to full-blown manic, and he's having a nervous breakdown at the start of this book. And when Luke Devine has a nervous breakdown, there's a lot of people and things and even nations that might be at risk from it because of the power that he holds. And the first thing that Evan does is he has to go because he's one of the few people who can exert control over this man. And so he's called in to sort of help this guy they've never been close friends, but they both are extremely powerful. And this book starts with Evan having to go in and see if he can hold this guy together who's having a nervous breakdown. And in the process of that nervous breakdown, a lot of parts of the world might come apart. But that's not even really what the story is. As always with Evan, it comes down to one person who is in desperate need.
Right.
It's individual. He doesn't like to deal with things on the abstract, ideological, political level. That's for Luke Devine. That's part of why Luke goes crazy. He's up there in his prefrontal cortex all the time. Evan comes across the trail of this woman who was kidnapped off a New York City subway and brutally assaulted. And that is where he puts all of his focus and help while trying to keep and move Luke Devine back towards health and stability at the same time.
You've written several short stories in between your novels, starting since you started the series. Between Nemesis and Antihero, you wrote The Code. Is there a reason for these short stories? Or is it something, I want to try this, but it may not be enough for a full novel, full thriller?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I like to go and use these short stories as an excuse to explore other aspects of Evan's world. And so in The Code, which was so much fun for me to write, I go back to when Evan's a teenager. He's undergoing brutal training from Jack Johns, his handler. He's made to go across the country under different aliases as a teenage kid. And he's subjected to Navy SEALs BUDS training, but it's just him. He's solo. He doesn't have a BUDS class because everything he does and is trained is covert and off the books. And it just sort of is this brutal depiction of a mission, a training mission that he's put on, which of course collides with real menace and real threats that he has to contend with also. And I wanted to go back in a lot of ways. The short stories come out at times in ways that are thematically linked to what is happening in the larger series. And so in this case, as Evan is learning to integrate a higher code, let's just call it a higher ethic, into his Assassin's 10 Commandments, this goes back and really sets the base of the code. This is the foundation of the code that he was taught. And this is what he was taught as a future assassin. And a lot of the 10 Commandments are listed here. Assume nothing. How you do anything is how you do everything. Never make it personal. There's a lot of these commandments that are there. And so it's a contrast from some of the ways that he is shedding aspects of his old self to evolve into a more dimensionalized human being.
And it seems like you have him thinking about different parts of his code in different books. In this one, it's more about making things personal, correct?
Yes. Yeah, he fails at the fourth commandment here, never make it personal. He's getting to a place where that tipping point of his humanity, which I talked about, it's getting too much for him to sit back and to not feel empathy and to not feel a personal connection to the people around him and the people who he's helping when they are deserving. And so there's cracks in this armor that are letting in emotion, which for him also codes for letting in vulnerability. And vulnerability, if he's feeling too much of that, is not safe on a mission, given how dangerous these missions are for him.
You touch on several issues in Antihero: mental illness, internet content, gangs, just to be three of them. How do they become part of your books? Do you come across something and say, I'd like Evan to experience that? Or is it something maybe that has touched you in a specific way that you want to deal with in the page?
It's a very good question. I never think about books in terms of bigger themes, but I always think in terms of plots and scenes and snippets of dialogue and characters. All this weird stuff comes to me. But then in the process of writing it, they tend to integrate in some way that makes sense that I wasn't aware of in my prefrontal cortex, but obviously some part of me was organizing all this. And so with Evan here, who is Antihero is very much about him raising the level of his awareness as a human being and finding a new code. In opposition to that, in some ways, most logically, would be the utter nihilism of this pack of boys who assaulted this young woman. They are crazed from a lifetime spent on the internet with porn and with video games and with violence and with idiocy and Reddit and all these other things. And they've just been pounded down into this flat, soulless existence. And they almost don't even register the things that they're doing as evil or problematic. They're devoid of moral compass. And it's something I think we've been observing a great deal in the world when people go too far, if they're pushed too far in one direction, whether that's too far left or too far right. they enter into this terrible horseshoe of nihilism, and that nihilism goes and meets everybody at the edges. And so as Evan is trying to grow and he's learning to feel more in the service of what he's doing, what he's up against is just this horrific blankness in this pack of this herd of young men who are committing these horrible acts.
When you look back at The Tower, your first thriller that you published back in 1999, I know it's almost, I guess, 26 years now. What goes through your mind? The struggle to get it published. You look at the writing, where the writing was back then compared to now. When you look at The Tower, what runs through your mind?
Well, the first thing I think about is there's parts of that I wrote when I was 19 years old. And I don't think anybody should ever be held accountable for anything that they thought or wrote when they were 19 years old, let alone having to be part of the permanent public record. So, there's some writing in there that I would sure like to rewrite at some point. But, I think more than anything else right now, I just feel so grateful at this point for the career that I've been able to have. I mean, I sold that book so young. I was 22 or 23 years old when I sold it. I had just enough money to write full time and stretch it out till I could sell my next book. And I still can't even believe I get paid to do this. It's such a delight. I love going out on book tours. I got a big book tour plan with Antihero. I'm going to be through Texas and all over California and Florida and St. Louis and Chicago. And it's going to be, I'm going through Scottsdale. And I love going on tour for this. I love to spend all the time that I get to spend writing and then the interactions that I get to have with readers. And so thinking back to me at 19, when I started this whole venture with all the, foolish headstrongness of youth, I'd be there's a lot for me to be grateful for. That's for sure.
Folks might not know that you've also written comics in both the Marvel and the DC universes. How did that happen? And is there a big difference in ideas in writing a book versus ideas in writing in the comic world?
Yeah, they're all different. TV's different from features, or different feature films, which is different from comics. I was about 5 books in, and I got a call from the executive editor of Marvel, and he was a fan of my books. I tend to play around and deal with themes of vigilante violence and justice, as is evident from Orphan X. And he was just a fan of the writing. And he said, hey, do you want to pick a character out of the Marvel vaults and sort of reinvent them? And it was an amazing, amazing experience. So I was with Marvel, I wrote Moon Knight and I wrote Punisher and I wrote Wolverine. And then I went to DC and wrote Batman for a couple of years. It was extraordinary. It's very different. It's much, there's a limited array of things that you can do with the character. So it's like, it's a balance of wanting to put my own stamp on it, but also to be aware if I'm writing Batman, Batman was around before my dad was born. He's going to be around chasing down bad guys after I'm dead and gone. And so in a way, it's like this public trust that is that was handed to me or to those who get to write these characters for a brief time. And you want to honor what's come before and put your own embellishments and touch and passion into it and add a little bit and then hand it off well. So it's different in that regard.
Several of your contemporaries have landed deals to take their characters to streaming or to TV or to movies. Might we see Orphan X on another platform someday?
Yeah, I'm hoping to have some news to announce in 2026. So we're close to some things that are percolating around, and stay tuned. You can follow me on the usual suspects on social media, and you can also catch me on the website, gregghurwitz.net, where you can sign up for my newsletter, and I can keep people posted on this. But I'm hoping to have something to share pretty soon here.
Once again, Gregg Hurwitz's new book is called Antihero, the 11th thriller in the series featuring Orphan X, Evan Smoak. It is available now for you to read, and take my word for it, this is a fun read of a character that millions of people have grown to really like and follow. Gregg, good to have you here. Appreciate your time. Congratulations once again on another great book.
Thank you so much.